If you're getting started on ClickUp in 2025, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to give you a full tour of ClickUp and show you how it has the potential to be the central operating system for your business. It can help you build solid processes, track projects, track documentation, and make sure your team works flawlessly and asynchronous together. Now, if you don't know me already, my name's Ramzi and I founded Upsys, and we help businesses scale up through solid processes and automations. And one of our favorite tools to do so is ClickUp. Why? Because ClickUp offers most of the features your team would need to handle projects and to work together. It has project management features, it has integrated comments, chat, task management, views, etc., etc. Now, if you're aware of project softwares available on the market, you'll probably handle and understand very easily this tutorial. But if all of this is new to you, this video is going to be quite intense because we're going to unpack most of ClickUp features in less than an hour, and I'm going to try to give you the full scope of that software so that you get to understand and grasp how it can really help you solidify your processes and work easier together. So feel free to watch this video at your own pace. You can pause it, you can get to your ClickUp workspace and set things up as I show you at the same time. It's going to be chaptered and we're going to go through the steps that I have attached right here. So you're going to be able to take some breaks and set things up in between. So you're going to start with the homepage, which is basically what you'll land on when you open up ClickUp. I'm going to explain you really quickly what the user interface looks like. And then from there, we'll set up our notifications in the software, because to me, that's probably the first thing you should do. Otherwise, you'll be very frustrated with how notifications are handled by default. And then we'll move on to the core concepts of ClickUp. So the hierarchy with spaces, folders, lists, and then we'll talk about task management. I'll show you some views, custom fields, automations, and timesheets. If you're discovering ClickUp in 2025, this video is perfect for you. You'll see that this video is kind of split into two halves, because in the first half, I'll explain things quite thoroughly about the homepage till the tasks. And then when we'll move on to the views and the more advanced features, I'll have to give you a broader scope because those features are much more complex. There's so many things to do and to see, and we won't have time in under an hour to dive deep into each and every single feature. I'll explain you the basics and then I'll show you all the other possibilities so that you realize the whole potential of this software. Now, if you're ready to get started on ClickUp with me in 2025, let's go. We are going to start by discovering the homepage, and I have a ClickUp workspace right here. And what I recommend you is to build your homepage this way. So minimize the amount of cards you'll have in the homepage. Start by having 3 simple cards. The first card is going to be My Work, and My Work is basically where you're going to see all the tasks assigned to you grouped by due date. You'll have the to-date tasks, the overdue tasks, the next tasks, etc., etc. So this is based on the due date of the task, and as soon as you've tackled it, you can just check it there and it'll be just closed. Then you'll have the assigned comments. So that's where you'll see the different comments that people assign to you, and that's quite a core feature of ClickUp. I'm going to explain you very thoroughly how the inbox and comments work in Click, so you'll be able to use it yourself. And to me, that's probably like 50% of what makes ClickUp a great tool. It's not the project management only, it's the collaboration feature and the back and forth comments you can have with your teammate. Then you'll have the recents card. In this card, you'll see all the tasks and lists that you have interacted on. You'll have a quick access to something you've been working on recently. Now you can set those cards this way by clicking Manage Cards and then picking the same cards as you have in this video. So recents, My Work, and assigned comments. Obviously, this is personal, so this is my advice. You can always set it up the way you want and organize cards your way, but I advise you to keep it simple to a max of 2 to 3 cards. Then if we move on to the rest of the interface, let's start from the top. You'll have the search bar. You can click on the search bar on top or press Command or Control K on your keyboard, and from there you can search anything in ClickUp. So I find myself using this search command so much more than I go through lists and folders and look up for specific tasks, because all you have to do is just look up for a task, and if I have a task that says journal, I'll just find it and click enter, and it'll open it up straight in its location. Using the search bar is so much faster and powerful than navigating the hierarchy. Now, the hierarchy is an essential concept of ClickUp to organize yourself, but once you've grasped the tool, trust me, you'll be using that search bar so much more. Now, second element of the interface I want to show you is these hubs. So in here, you'll have a centralized access to your inbox, which are all your comments or notifications that you might have related to tasks you've worked on. Then you'll have your chat. You can message someone and just say, hey, how are you? And they'll just get a message on their ClickUp account, so they'll be able to reply to you from their phone or desktop. You can create channels related to certain topics or to certain lists in ClickUp. So we'll talk about the concept of list later. And it's basically a real alternative to chat tools like Microsoft Teams, Slack, Discord. So if your team's working in ClickUp, it does make sense to save yourself 2 subscriptions and to use ClickUp chats. Now, what I like about this as well is that you can invite your clients as guests to ClickUp, for example, and just give them access to ClickUp chat as well. Next aspect is documents. Now, we won't dive deep into how to build and design documents, but you can create documents from there and see their location. Make sure that you don't create as many documents as I have here. That's really bad practice. And that is actually not a great location to access your documents, because your documents should be organized. And I actually talk about this in a dedicated video about ClickUp documents. You can find it on my channel. Now, just to show you quickly how a document looks in ClickUp, we have a wiki right here. And if we open it up, it's basically a bunch of pages that have potential sub-pages, and you can go as many levels as you want. And then in each page, you can structure your content the way you want. You can add images, you can create columns, etc., etc. So it's really great to host a backup of your documents, of your blog articles, to host your company wiki, your SOPs, etc. I love how ClickUp has improved the document feature over the last year. It's much snappier and faster than it used to. And now I really recommend it as an alternative to storing your documents in Microsoft Word or Google Docs if you're using ClickUp. You can really make it a central place, and you can export your documents and back them up if you want to in the settings. Now, next aspect is going to be dashboards. Dashboards are a way to monitor the progress on your tasks, how your tasks are turned up, how are tasks balanced across different tasks. And you can always create new dashboards, and ClickUp even offers you some pre-made dashboards, although I recommend building dashboards yourself. Building dashboards is actually one of the most requested features that our clients have at Upsys. So if you need help on this, you can always book a discovery call and we can talk about reporting and how we can help you build solid KPIs into this tool. Now, with that said, we'll move on to the latest hubs. So we have Clips, which is basically an area where you have all your screen recordings that you've made in ClickUp. Because yes, ClickUp lets you make video recordings and it even transcribes them. So when you record yourself, it just creates an AI transcript from there, and it's a proper alternative to a tool like Loom. So if you're having a bug, if you need to explain a process, all you have to do is just record yourself, and from there ClickUp will store that recording and you can access it in the clips. You can link it to a task or whatever you want. Next feature is going to be timesheets, and we'll get back to timesheets later. I'll show you how it interacts with tasks. But this is basically a feature that lets you see how much time has everyone spent on tasks through a week, which tasks they worked on, and now you can even approve timesheets if someone has submitted it through ClickUp. So if you go to the approval part, you can set up timesheets approval and set up some rules around it, and then validate the timesheets of your members if you're a ClickUp administrator, for example. Now, this feature is brand new, and they're adding features as we speak, so there'll probably be some new features as you're watching this video related to timesheets. And I'm really excited about this part, because I feel like that's been one of the missing pillars of ClickUp, and that's been one of the most requested features from my clients. Like, how can we have good, clear timesheets and dashboards in ClickUp? And I don't know how far ClickUp will go with that, but it's definitely interesting to see that this feature is being developed. Now, as an alternative, I've actually created a tool that lets you export your timesheets from ClickUp into Google Sheets and create dashboards and reportings for this. It's called ClickUp to Sheets, and users love it because being able to export your timesheets and import them into a tool like your accounting software is really a time saver if you have an hourly based billing, for example, if you're working with freelancers. So I don't know if ClickUp will offer the ability to export timesheets anytime soon, but just so you know, my Google Workspace add-on ClickUp to Sheets does it. And there's a dedicated video that shows you how to. The link is going to be attached and you can check out later if you're interested about exporting timesheets. I'm not going to dive into the rest of the features because that would take too much time, but just so you know, you can create whiteboards in ClickUp. You can use features like goal tracking and pulse, although I feel like these features are a little bit lagging behind and I don't recommend creating actual goals in ClickUp or using pulse. So try to focus on the one that ClickUp pins by default right here. And if you want to unpin a feature, you can always do it right here. So say you're not using dashboards, for example, you can just turn it off and it will disappear from there. Now, next aspect of your user interface is your favorites. And as you can see, I have lists and some documents and dashboards right here. And if I click the pin here, I can pin these favorites here on top. And that way I can access this very quickly. So say I want to pin a document, I'll just go to the document, right click, and then add to favorites. If I do that, I can just click on my favorites bar here on top and access that document in a snap. So if you're working on something that you have to access to very often, whether it's a document, a list, a task, you can just pin it to your favorite bar. And I love that feature as well. Now I think that's it as a tour of the ClickUp interface. We'll dive into the ClickUp hierarchy a little bit later. But before that, I want you to set up your notifications. You're going to click on your avatar here on the top right, and you're going to click onto notification settings. Now, I want you to set up your notifications exactly the way I did it right here. So you're going to click auto watch tasks I'm involved in, and then you're going to leave when I comment on a task or subtask only. You want to do that because you don't want to be notified on every single task that you've worked on, interacted on. You only want information on something that you left a comment on, because it means that you're probably expecting an answer from someone. So leave when I comment on a task or subtask. And then smart notification is going to be 3 hours. I won't really dive into what are smart notifications, but it's basically that little gap of time between the time you're working on the ClickUp and the time you actually want to receive a notification. And it makes sure that you're not going to be notified on things that you are already working on in that window. So leave it to 3 to 6 hours. And then when it comes to the inbox and the email notifications, you're only going to leave comment-related notifications. You're going to turn off the browser notifications. If you go here, click disable notifications and do the same for mobile. And in the email, you're going to leave mentions only. If you do that, you're only going to receive an email if someone actually mentions you in a task, which means you're not going to be polluted with 1,000 emails just because the status has changed or someone has left a comment that doesn't mention you. And next, you're going to go into the inbox and click custom. And when you click that gear, you're only going to leave on the toggles that ClickUp doesn't let you disable. So you're going to disable everything that you can and leave whatever is by default, like status changes, descriptions, checklists, etc. And ClickUp kind of knows what is the most important, so that's why they made it mandatory to leave it on. So it's going to be task comments and task activity like status changes and tasks assigned to you. Then you're going to click save whenever you've edited those settings. And if you follow those steps, you're only going to be notified on whichever matters. So your inbox is going to be much less cluttered. You're only going to see important stuff up there. And you're going to thank me for not receiving 1,000 emails in your mailbox and just focusing on whichever matters in the ClickUp inbox. Once that's done, we're going to go back to Workspace. And then from there, we're going to create our first space. But before we do that, we need to understand what's a space in ClickUp. A space is part of the ClickUp hierarchy. And if we look that up right here, ClickUp is structured that way. You will have your workspace. So in my case, it's called agencies. And then from there, you're going to have your different spaces. And we have some other examples of spaces like space 2 and space 3. If we open up the marketing space, we have folders. So those folders, they're going to have that little folder icon in ClickUp that you can see here. And then we're going to have lists in red. So this one is going to be in red too. And that's basically that little list icon that we have right here. It's important to understand these aspects because this determines everything when it comes to setting up your statuses, your user permissions, your custom fields, your views. Why? Because tasks are nested into lists. So you're going to have task 1 and then task 2, etc., etc. And then if we draw a little rectangle, if you want users to access only task 1 and 2, you're going to have to set up permissions right here. If you want users to access task 1, 2, and 3, you're going to have to set permissions right here, which means in the ads folder level. And then if you want users to access everything, you'll have to give them access to the marketing space. And this also applies to the views you create, to the filters you create, to the custom fields you use. So if you create a custom field in the Google Ads list, you won't be able to see it in the list SEO or the meta ads list. Everything is going to be limited to whichever level you create it at. And that's very important because I see clients creating items at the wrong level so often. They're going to create a custom field at the marketing level when only one team needs it, maybe the meta ads team, or they're going to give access to a list one by one to everyone instead of giving access to the whole marketing space. So you need to make sure that you understand this concept of hierarchy. And I'm going to show you in ClickUp how we're going to create our first space. So I'm going to click the plus button here, new space, and from there I'm going to name my space delivery. This is a space where we're going to do our client work. For example, it will have all our operational SOPs and steps and client interactions. So let's call it delivery. And then I'll click continue and pick only the list in the settings for views. So I want you to always minimize the amount of views you create. And I don't know why, but ClickUp always, by default, enables the board view when you create a space, but you don't really need that view very often. So I'll just disable it for now and click done. And then in terms of statuses, you need to make sure that it fits your workflow. Here, I've created a few examples of statuses. You can have more complex ones, more simple ones, and you can create your own. Obviously, a sales team is going to have a different workflow from a delivery team. The delivery team might have a regular workflow like this one to do in progress, review, validated, done. And then a sales team could have a workflow like new client, reached, meeting, proposal, lost. You have to make sure that those workflows actually fit your need and fit your work. Let's keep a simple workflow for now. We'll pick this one to do in progress to review, validated, done, and then apply changes. So that means that every single folder and list is going to have that workflow applied. And if we go back right there, you're going to ask me, okay, but what if I want a specific list to have certain statuses? Well, you have to make sure that you set up those statuses at that list level. So don't worry about it. You'll be able to edit your permissions, your statuses, your custom fields at the right level in ClickUp. Now let's get back to ClickUp and finish up our space setup. So if we enter the ClickUp settings, you're going to see that there's a bunch of options available. ClickUps are basically features of ClickUp that you can disable and enable on demand. And I like that because ClickUp is quite overwhelming as you get started. So being able to only focus on what matters is good when you create your first space. So I recommend you to only leave the most important ClickUps. You're going to disable priority, email, and you may want to leave tags, although that's also an extra feature that you don't really need in the beginning, in my opinion. And then we're going to leave custom fields. We're going to disable multiple assignees. I actually never recommend you to turn on multiple assignees because I feel like assigning a task to several people makes it lose accountability. So you'd rather create subtasks and assign it to every single person that works on that overall main task. Then we're going to leave time tracking and time estimates, remap subtask due dates, incomplete warning, dependency, reschedule, and everything. So if you have that set up to get started, that should be more than enough, and you don't have to worry because you can always turn on a feature later if you want to. So I'm going to click done, and then from there, I'll click create space. So ClickUp is going to create that first space for me, and in there, it's going to create an empty list. And it's going to create two views right here. So one is going to be called the overview, and that's a brand new feature of ClickUp. It's kind of similar to a space dashboard in the sense that you can add as many cards as you want, and those are actually the same cards that the dashboard feature offers you. So you could see the tasks by assignees, you could do some calculation, stuff like that, and have it in your overview. So instead of creating a dashboard view or a dashboard, I end up using overviews more and more because it saves yourself from one extra view, and you can just simplify that overview and create the cards that you actually need. So you can delete those default cards if you wanted to and create the ones you need or reorganize them the way you want. One of the cards I like is also being able to see your project's progress by having the percentage of closed tasks in each list. Now let's create our first folders and lists in that space. We'll get back to our diagram and I'm going to create a few clients. So I have a client called Wayne. We'll create a list for them. I have one called Gringotts and maybe one called Acne. So I'll create all those lists and let's get back to ClickUp and we'll actually use the default list that ClickUp creates for us. And we'll create our first client called Wayne, the second one called Gringotts, and then again, plus button, add a list, and we'll just call it Acme. I press enter and then I have 3 lists. Pretty quick. So just plus button and then I can add a list. You can always duplicate a list if you want to by right clicking on it and clicking duplicate. That's good if you already have a setup for a certain list and it actually prompts you to whichever you want to bring. So if you want to do, you could bring some specific settings from one list to another once you duplicate it, but that's a little bit more advanced. It's not what matters right now. So we have 3 lists and say we want to archive our old clients. So say Wayne and Gringotts are old clients. So what you can do is create a folder to group those lists together. So we'll create a folder right here. I'll just take this little branch and in there, I'll put my own past clients and I can call that folder past clients. I like using diagramming tool like this one. And that's actually how I work with clients because it lets us see things visually outside of ClickUp to build a solid foundation for our workspace. I recommend you to always lay out your hierarchy before you build it in the tool. So we have our past clients, we have our lists right here. And what I can do is just create that folder in ClickUp. So I'll click plus, and this time instead of list, I'll pick folder and I'll name it past clients. And I can just drag and drop my past clients right there. And I can just delete that list that ClickUp created by default for me. So we have a structure for our delivery space. I can quickly archive my past clients. I can see my current clients right there, and I can add new ones if I want to. That's how I would structure a delivery space. Now, obviously, it's for you to think of a structure that fits your workflow, that fits your business. And that's actually part of what we do at Upsys. So we help companies structure their ClickUp hierarchy and set up the right list, the right views, the right templates, and everything. If you want to make sure you don't make mistakes in how to build up your ClickUp hierarchy, you can book a discovery call and we'll go through your needs and how you can set up an optimized ClickUp workspace for you. Now that we've created our spaces, folders, and lists, we can move on to understanding the concept of tasks. So if we open up a list in ClickUp, we can see that we can create a task right there. Say we have to set up a branding campaign for that client, Acme. We have this main project, right? So I'll create a task that hosts this project and call it Setup Branding Campaign. I'll click enter and it's created my first task in ClickUp. So if I click the plus button right there, I can add a subtask and I can split up that task into steps that makes me achieve it and makes it more sizable and lets you assign each and every step to that overall project, because setting up a branding campaign is probably made by several people and takes some time. So we want to make sure that this is reflected in the tool. We're going to pick a few simple steps like building a brief for the client, setting up the campaign, and monitoring it. So we'll say build client brief and then create campaign and then monitor campaign. This is a very basic project. It might be very different in your reality, in your business. You want to make sure that this structure fits your need, because I'm going to show you later how you can save it and reuse it through ClickUp templates. But say we have this setup branding campaign and we can assign it if you want to. So before I start working on this example, I'll just duplicate it for a template later and I'll call it setup branding campaign template. We duplicate. And then I'm just going to take this example and call it example. Okay. And maybe assign those tasks to a few people. Build client brief will be assigned to this person and monitor to this one. And then I can set the due date of each step. So I can say, for example, the whole campaign has to be done by the end of February. And then maybe we have a deadline of each next Friday. So I'm keeping it simple. Next Friday, 14th of February, and then we have 21st. Okay, so I have a campaign right here. It has an assignee, some due dates, and I recommend you to add another column, which is the start date. Those are basically the main information that you want to have filled on every single task. So I'll actually put an overall start date for my project. Let's put Monday the 3rd, and then this one's going to be on the 10th, this one the 17th, and this one is going to be 24th till 28th. Now that it's done, I'm going to open up that task and show you how a task can look in the ClickUp. So a task is basically built into 3 panels. On the left panel, you're going to have the structure of your task with its subtasks. So you're going to have each and every single level of your task and its lower levels tasks, and you can create subtasks from there. By the way, you can have up to 7 levels of subtasks in ClickUp. That's quite crazy, and I recommend you to stick to 2 to 3 levels. So maybe you can have an extra subtask level if you wanted to. Next panel is going to be your main task information. So we can even hide that left panel. And in here, we can see here on top, the most important task info. So your status, your assignee, your due dates, and then your time tracking. If you wanted to add an estimate, you can click the hourglass right here on top and added a time estimate for a task. By the way, the time estimate of the parent task and the lower level task will accumulate. So that means if I add 3 hours here and I add 2 hours on the task underneath it, it's going to show up 5 hours on the one on top. I like that because you can plan things both at a higher level as a manager for organization of the overall project, and then a half-time estimates on every single step if you want your users to exactly know how long do you think they will take. Then you have the time tracking features. So if I click play right here, I can track my time, or I can also log it by clicking right there and adding a few hours if I wanted to, and that will add some extra time to my task. Next, we have the task description. So in the task description, you can basically click slash and have some formatting and some information about the main steps to go through to achieve your tasks. So you can structure that by having, for example, a heading one and saying steps. With the slash command, you can create some bullets or some numbering, and then you could have some numbered list, for example, and structure like step 1, step 2, etc. So structuring your text is doable in any text array in ClickUp, which means you can do it here in the description, but also in the comment section that I'll show you later, or in the ClickUp documents. I recommend you to get started on the slash commands. I actually talk about that in the ClickUp docs video that I made, because I find it much nicer to have a clean and user-friendly interface. That way, everything is pretty clear. If you have some key information, you could have a banner, for example, and have like a red banner for something important. Now, obviously, it takes some training to understand every single feature about the slash command. Next up, custom fields and subtasks. Custom fields are a way to track custom information on a task based on your workflow and your team. So they're very, very powerful. ClickUp lets you create AI custom field, and that's quite new, but you have to focus on the default ones to get started. So you can create a website custom field if you wanted to. Say every single of your tasks need to have some website information. That's quite important. You're going to create a custom field and call it website. And in there, you can store a URL if you wanted to. So if I type in my URL, I'm storing some custom data in that task, and I can add as many custom data as I want in a list. Now, a big mistake I see is creating custom fields before checking that you don't already have custom field that match it in your workspace. So if you've already created a website custom field, make sure that you add it from your workspace first. And it's the case for any kind of custom fields like emails, dropdowns, and everything. You want to centralize and reuse existing custom fields. And then finally, for the main area, you have subtasks and checklists. And I'm bringing those together because you have to make a choice. So when to choose between subtasks and checklists? You want to choose subtasks when you want to have custom information like a due date, a description, some comments on a dedicated action. And you want to use checklists when it's much simpler, like going through steps, for example, and basically assigning those steps to people without having any extra information. So you want to make sure you keep it as simple as possible. If it's enough to use checklists, stick with checklists. If you really need to dive deeper into your tasks and actions and create dependencies and use those toggles, you want to use subtasks because it's much more visual and you can see each and every single level one below another. Final step of our main panel, uploading content. So you can upload anything from a cloud service or from your laptop and then have it stored in a task. And obviously that's very handy if you're using ClickUp, your design team, you want to bring in some screenshots, if you want to bring in some extra info, something to contextualize your task, you can do that by just dragging and dropping your attachments or just clicking the plus button right here in the bottom next to the attachments area. And then we have the activity panel on the right. Very often it's underused, but I find it very useful. First off, because you can have some log of everything that's happened on your task. So if someone changes status, if someone reassigns someone, that will appear right here on the right side. And having that audit trail is good in terms of compliance, but also good in terms of monitoring your ClickUp usage. But the most important feature of the activity panel is going to be the comment section. And if you write a comment right here, you can basically mention or assign a comment to someone to let them know that they have some important tasks to tackle related to that topic. So if I click Diane, for example, I can mention her and say, hey, it's important to finish this by Friday. And then I can press add twice and, for example, mention a task, or 3 times and mention a document. So I can combine mentioning someone with mentioning a document, for example, and telling them, hey, it's important to do this, or you have to check out this SOP, which is stored in a document. And then all you have to do is click send, and they will receive a notification in their inbox. What you can also do is, instead of mentioning, assigning them. And the only difference is that if you click send, this time it will create a little tick here on top and kind of like tell the person implicitly that they have to achieve this action. It's an action more than an information. Whenever it's an action, I recommend using assignments. Otherwise, if it's just info, you can use mentions. Once you've mentioned or assigned a task to someone or sent a video recording or an audio recording to someone, they will receive it in their inbox here on the top left. And from there, you can tackle every single comment that someone has mentioned you in. So if I open that up and say someone has mentioned me on that task, I can go into the activity panel and just reply back and say, okay, it's done, for example. And then they will receive a notification in their inbox. And that way you can go back and forth. And it's kind of like having a back and forth email conversation, except this time is contextualized into its own topic with its own task, its own deadline, its own estimate. So it's much easier to tackle your comments that way and then clear them and go through each topic one by one, kind of like you're going through your email inbox, but in a much more focused and task-oriented way. And I love that mindset of being able to focus on a task, to know what it's about, to see the attachment, to see the context, rather than having your brain switching back and forth between your emails that are just informations, the other that are actions, but you don't really remember what it's about. So making use of those comments and inbox features together is one of the most important aspects on getting started with ClickUp, according to me. I want you to check it out, and I want you to start using your inbox and your comments if you're working together as a team in ClickUp. Now I'm gonna get back to my list right here, and I'm pretty much done with the task. So I'm gonna show you everything you can do about viewing that data, viewing those tasks into this list called Acme. Now we're gonna focus on the most important views, which are the list view, the Gantt view, the calendar view, and the board Kanban view. So I'm gonna create each of those 4 views. We already have a list view, so we're gonna create a Gantt view, then we'll create a calendar view, and then a Kanban view. Views are ways to see your tasks through different layouts. So the board view is based on the Kanban method. If you've been using a tool like Trello, you know how it looks like. It's basically a column-based view that lets you organize your tasks vertically. Next, the calendar view is a time-based view that's very useful when it comes to event planning or content planning. That's where I plan my content on YouTube, for example. Then we have the Gantt view, which is very, very powerful and useful if you want to do some time planning and dependency planning and reschedule your projects dynamically. And last but not least, you'll have the list view, which is the one you've been seeing so far. It's the most important view on ClickUp by far. It's turned on by default, and you're going to be using the list view probably 95% of your time. The other ones are useful in very specific cases. The calendar view is actually useful in event planning and content planning, as I've said, but we will not really talk about that because that will take too long. I'll show you really quickly the Gantt view and the board view and how they can be useful. So if we start with the Gantt view, it's great when it comes to planning. So we have this task right here, setup, branding campaign example. And if we unzoom, we have some tasks and subtasks, right? So we have planned those tasks earlier and we can see that visually. That's already amazing. And it's great if you're starting to have a large project and you want to plan it visually rather than having to think of your tasks and their timeline in the list view. The first thing you can do is create dependencies between tasks. So if we take that little dot on the Gantt view right here on the right, and you bring it to the left of the next task, and you do so for every single task, you're basically going to create links between those tasks. And those links mean that a task is dependent of the others. So for the campaign creation to be done, you need to finish the client brief first, right? That makes sense. So you want to create those dependencies between your tasks if you want to plan them dynamically. And if you go to the settings right here on the top right and layout options, if you turn on reschedule dependencies, you can move a task and everything else that's after and dependent on it will move, which makes sense, right? And if I want to move the whole project, every single task will be moved as well. So having those dependencies combined with the reschedule dependencies feature in the Gantt view is really game changer. It's going to save you a lot of time when it comes to project planning, because it's fairly easy to reschedule 3 tasks manually. But say you had 10, 20, 100 tasks in a project and you templatize that project to reuse later. You don't want to be rescheduling those projects each time. So having dependencies across tasks and subtasks is a very handy feature. Now, the next view I'm going to show you is the board view. So as I've said, the board view lets you see tasks vertically in a more visual manner than the list view. It's amazing if you're going through a pipeline, like a development pipeline, a recruiting pipeline, a sales pipeline, and you want to see things moving step by step. I don't recommend it in project planning and client delivery though, because it doesn't offer you the ability to see subtasks easily. You can do it, but it's not as handy as having them wrapped and unwrapped in the list view. So I recommend you to use this if you have simple cards and you're doing production, some sales, some HR, and you want to move things that way. You can definitely fine-tune this board view as well. You can customize it. You can make the layout smaller or larger. You can group your tasks with different criteria, so they don't necessarily have to be grouped by status. They could be grouped by due date or by assignee, for example, if you wanted to. And if we assign this one, it's just going to show me the tasks by assignee vertically. So that's it for the board view. Great if you want to group tasks vertically, if you're following a pipeline, if you want something more visual, more card-based. And then finally, the list view. The list view is extremely powerful because it lets you see tasks and wrap them and unwrap them that way. And it lets you see a lot of data on a single screen real estate because you can display extra fields on that list view. Obviously, you can do it in the other views, but I feel like having it in the list view and having a view that looks a little bit like a spreadsheet is somehow more user-friendly and more understandable when you get started with the tool. So try to keep it simple when you start and just focus on this list view. So I'll spend time showing you how to customize this list view. First thing you can do is add columns. So you can add a default column created by ClickUp, like the time estimate if you wanted to. So I'm just going to search for estimate and turn that one on. Or you can add a custom field column that you've created earlier, like the website one that I've created. So I just search for website and turn it on, and I have it right there. So we have our task, we have some estimates, some website information, and we can add more information on those fields. Second thing you can do is change the grouping settings. So as you can see here, my list view is grouped by status, but I can also group it through different criteria. So by due date, if I wanted to, or by assignee, or by tags. And say I want to see every single subtask grouped by assignee. You can even group them by custom field if you have the right custom fields set up in that view. Now say I want to see all my tasks grouped by assignee, but also my subtasks. what I can do is group my list view by assignee, and then in the subtask settings, click as separate tasks. And you're going to be able to see what Ramzi has to do, what Lucas has to do, what Diane has to do. And if you assign those tasks to those people, they'll just go into these little slots of groupings by assignee. Next thing you can do is have filters. So say you don't want to see the tasks of the user called Ramzi. You're going to click filter and then click assignee in the filter settings is not, and then pick Ramzi. So that way you'll only see tasks of Lucas and Diane. And you can combine those filters together to have much more complex conditions, like combining a filter by assignee, and maybe if we change some statuses, having another filter that says, I only want to see tasks for these people in the status review. So you can add another filter and say, and status is to review confirm. So we're only going to see a sample that we need of those tasks in our view. So you can create a view by assignee and name it by assignee, and then another one by status and name it by status, or whichever you want. I hope this little demo of views helps you grasp the power of what you can do and how you can show your data in ClickUp. Because by default, you can structure things by status, but it might be useful to group things by assignee or even by deadline. I personally have created a method called the batch method that lets you group your tasks by week of work. That way you know what to tackle this week, next week, the one after. And if you're starting to get more advanced on ClickUp, you can have a look at the dedicated videos on the batch method in ClickUp. By combining grouping, filtering, and subtask settings, you can do so many things in ClickUp views. I'm going to show you a few advanced features that you have in ClickUp. I'm going to go very quickly, but the idea is just to open your mind to the possibilities of ClickUp and to how it can help you out and how it can speed up your workflow. But obviously, these are more advanced, so I want to open up your mind to how you can systemize your ClickUp. First thing you can do is have a task that is recurring and go into the due date and turn on set recurring and have it recurring at the frequency that you need. So if you click monthly and click every month, I want to create a new task and recur forever, you will create your first recurring task. And that means that every 8th of the month, for example, it's going to create a new task with the exact settings that are inside that task. So you're going to have the actual description, custom fields, step task, checklist if you fill them on. So if you have a process that is repeated, it is great to use the recurring task feature and saves you some time for having to create that task manually with the extra settings that you set up in the description, or say you put an SOP in the comment. And that way, by just having that little cycle, it will create the task by itself. Another power user feature I love is being able to add that task into different lists. So we have the Acme list here, and we have a Gringotts list right there. Say that task is actually cross-client, right? So I'm gonna right-click here and click Add to another list and look up the list called Gringotts. I'll click on the list, and what happens if we go on the list called Gringotts is that we have the task here as well. If we decide to change the status of that task or change the due date or whatever we want to do, doing this will affect the list called Acme. And every single change will be mirrored in the other list, which means you can collaborate across different teams or across different clients on the same task, on the same projects if you want to, if it has subtasks. So I love this add tasks to multiple list feature. Again, right click, add to, and add to another list. Now, this feature is available starting the business plan, I think, so you will not necessarily have it. You might have to upgrade, but if you're working cross projects, it's definitely going to help you with your productivity, and therefore it's worth it. Now, another way to systemize your ClickUp is going to be templates and automations. So you can combine those together. Say we have a branding campaign template. What I'm going to do is empty it out and maybe leave those assignees here because it's always the same people that work on this branding campaign. And if I want to, I can even set some start and due dates and dependencies. Actually, I'll just duplicate it and set up, I'll call it template branding campaign. This will create a second task that has the same pattern as the first one, but I can change the status if I want to. I can open it up and I can change the steps. I could turn off the comments if I wanted to, and basically clean it out and make sure that it's a one-size-fits-all kind of template. So I'll just empty out everything. I can leave the due dates. Maybe I can remove the assignees because that might change over time. So what I'm just doing right now is making sure that I have a task with subtasks that can reuse in the future. Why? Because if I right-click on that task and click templates, I can just save that task as a template, which will make it reusable. So if we call it branding template and click save template and say we only do branding for this client, we can create an automation, go here on the top right into automations and add an automation that whenever a task is created, so I'll pick task right here, we apply a template. So I'll click apply template and we'll pick our branding template. So I'll pick this one and click use template and click create. So what happens now is that if we have a new campaign to do for this client, say we have the campaign of 2025 and we click enter, this will create our task and we'll assign it to Diane because we created it in the Diane group. And if I open that task up, it has created the actual description and the actual subtask for that project. So I've saved myself a decent time for having to create those subtasks and maybe the start and due dates and estimates and everything we've done so far. A single click has made me create that task from a template. Now I've gone really fast into these recurring tasks, these template features, these automations, but diving deep into those advanced features would have taken way too long because there's so many automations that you can create, so many templates that you can set up, so many combinations that you can have. You can have advanced conditions, you can have conditions based on custom fields, and the possibilities with ClickUp are really, really huge. But this was just to get you started, to get you to understand the potential of the tool for you and your team. Now, if you need further help with ClickUp, the best is that you watch more advanced videos, but this was just for you to grasp the potential of this tool and to understand how it can help you systemize your business. If you want to go further, there's more advanced content on my channel, but you can also book a discovery call with us and we can help you out systemize your business through ClickUp, but also through external automation, through the use of AI and AI agents, and basically build a powerhouse for your business. There's also other services that we provide. We have a dedicated training on ClickUp called ClickUp Master. It's a full-on training made step-by-step for you to understand and build your ClickUp workspace yourself. And it's the result of hours and hours of working with clients and setting up workspaces so that you don't have to make any mistakes when you set up yours. And if you have some very, very specific problem on ClickUp, we can go through a 1-hour coaching call that is going to be super efficient and result-oriented onto solving your ClickUp issues, whether it's about setup or automations or templates or more advanced features. Now, my purpose with Upsys is to really help you out. There's free content, but whenever you're ready to ramp up your business, you can reach out to us. Now, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay productive.